Ohio State returned to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Tuesday for the resumption of spring practice after a week off for break. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com, along with Stephen Means and Doug Lesmerises. And obviously, we didn't get to watch practice today, but the main topic every day that we're here is going to be this quarterback competition between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. And Doug, you asked, because this isn't the first time that Ryan Day has overseen a quarterback competition at Ohio State. It's like, what, the fourth or fifth? This is going back now to Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. They've had to come up with this system to kind of how do you evaluate guys, how do you break it down. There's some good questions today about how you do that in situations that aren't necessarily live, not always game situations. And Ryan Day, I thought, made a good point that the game is changing, but the way you evaluate a quarterback isn't necessarily changing. The foundational parts of that are not changing. What were you, I guess, trying to get to with that question, and what do you think of his response?
Yeah, so to go from J.T. Barrett to Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields to C.J. Stroud, he has had different styles of quarterbacks here. So I wanted to know if that had changed what he wants in a quarterback, how he views the position. And I said, would you say the same thing the first day you got here in 2017? And he said, I'd say the same thing of what a quarterback needs. So then it's like, well, we're trying to figure out what does he think about the quarterback position that this competition can tell us. And I do think he got to feet right away. It's the first thing he said, which is when you think about Ryan Day, is not necessarily what you would think he would go to first. So I found that interesting because you will have what you want, but then you go to the strengths of the players you have, and that just was not C.J. Stroud's game the last 2 years. But he got there quick. But the other thing that I think matters is as you try to evaluate this, we're trying to say, hey, what are you doing? He said when he's watching practice, when they're getting ready for a scrimmage on Saturday, he's trying to see what they're seeing. And he talked about a lot about getting to a plan B. When something goes wrong, he's like, hey, if everything's drawn up and goes the way it should and you screw that up, that's a problem. That's a big problem. But then if it doesn't go right, what's your plan B? And that goes back to CJ had great plan Bs, which is a story I just wrote at cleveland.com. It's not with his feet. It's with his prep. It's with his mind. He plan B'd it that way. So anyway, feet, man, feet and eyes. You know what? I don't think it's about arm. I think it's feet and eyes. Maybe eyes and feet. We're just trying to figure out how Ryan Day's thinking.
But I think it's important that he didn't necessarily say feet as in we need someone that goes out and runs for 100 yards a game. He said feet within the pocket and feet outside the pocket to then make plays with the arm.
But he also said threaten the run game.
He did say threat in the run game. He did say that. But I think but that wasn't necessarily C.J. Stroud. That wasn't Dwayne Haskins. But I think those guys, and C.J. in particular, was better with his feet in the pocket and getting himself in position to do what you were talking about, the way he reads things and uses his brain, than he probably got credit for. I don't think you would have the success that he had being as consistent and efficient as he was without having some of that skill. When you heard that description today, when the way he laid it out, Stephen, did that give you any indication of how this quarterback competition is going to play out?
No, not really, because the way he described using the feet, obviously, if he'd have just said if it had just been you have to be a threat with your legs in the run game, which CJ was in the Georgia game, which we've talked about at this point, and other quarterbacks talked about how that game has really fundamentally been kind of embedded into that quarterback room at this point. Then maybe you'd lean, maybe Devin Brown's in the lead now because he's the guy of the two, him and Kyle McCord, who's probably the better athlete. But if he's talking about footwork, if he's talking about how he moves in the pocket, out of the pocket, buying time to get throws, well, that could be either of them at this point because really they come out in two different ways. You can look at Devin Brown and say he's great with his legs, but also it means sometimes he sees ghosts, which he'll admit to, and he had to kind of get comfortable in that pocket while Kyle McCord has been comfortable in the pocket but had to get better at being a playmaker with his legs. So I think he did a great job answering the question without giving away who might be in the lead because of that skill set.
I think ultimately the important thing is, and we spend so much, we're going to ask him so many questions. There's going to be more Saturday after the scrimmage, like parsing every single throw that these guys make. And how much do you prioritize something like he says from a physical standpoint as opposed to what you're talking about later on in that, Doug, which is don't make mistakes, limiting mistakes, making the right decision, turning, and sometimes feet is the plan B. I thought C.J. Stroud used his feet in the Georgia game where he gets out and makes that great touchdown pass. That's a combination of plan B and using your feet to get to where you can excel in plan B. So I think those are all things that it's all of them are little pieces of the full analysis that they're trying to make and that we're also trying to make of the decision that they're trying to make. But a lot more about that on Buckeye Talk, wherever you can find podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315. It'll be a very useful asset on Saturday when we're telling you exactly what we saw from Ohio State's first scrimmage of the spring.